Well, why don't you tell me about how you got started with your work?
So, my current work is the use, sort of a scientific use of precisely tuned sound frequencies to make changes in brain function and autonomic nervous system function for healing. But it's also used for comparing EEG studies of advanced states of consciousness, high states of meditation, high states of IQ, creativity. What do those brain states look like? And then using brainwave entrainment technology to entrain your brain to that state as like entrainment training wheels, so to speak. But back in the beginning, I thought I was going to be an artist. I was a musician and an artist and a filmmaker.
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
in the 60s, I went to art school for 4 years. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Coming out the other end of that, I had a couple of businesses of my own based on some of the work I'd done with sculptures and mold making and molten metals and manipulating alloys. That was my alchemy period, molten metal and making alloys. And then, so that was, I graduated when I was in 1966 from high school, and 1970 graduated from art school. 1977, through a series of misadventures, I ended up going to Iowa to chiropractic school and switched my whole life around. As part of my spiritual esoteric journey, if my physical body is the textbook of universal law in miniature, then I figured if I could learn a medical level of anatomy and physiology and chemistry, then I would really see those secrets in a detailed level that I wasn't exposed to unless I went to that length. I was not disappointed. We could have a whole show on esoteric anatomy and the mind-blowing stuff that you see. Just for instance, one day I'm in class and we're just studying blood. We're studying red blood cells. Red blood cells have hemoglobin. Why hemoglobin attracts oxygen is because of iron particles, right? The element of iron on the periodic table. Element of iron on the periodic table has the most affinity to oxygen than any other atom because they complete their shells perfectly. So it's super strong attraction to oxygen. That's why the body tended to use that, right? It's also one of the two things on the periodic table that has magnetic properties. You can make magnets out of iron, but you can't make magnets out of any other metal. Aluminum or gold or silver have no magnetic properties, only iron.
Right.
Yeah. And in physics class, when you have something with magnetic properties in motion, it generates an electrical field. That's how a generator works. You've got big magnets spinning with wires moving through, and that generates electricity in the wires, and that's how my house gets lights. So if you've got iron floating through your blood and moving, it's generating an electrical biofield just by the circulation of the blood through your body. On the heels of that revelation, I'm sitting in class, right? Wait a second, what happens when you've got iron filings in the presence of oxygen in water? What does it do? It rusts. What color is rust? Red. I'm going, oh my God, now I know why blood is red. It's rusting iron particles floating around, generating electrical fields that you can measure. bioelectrical fields, right? Anyway, that's 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute of 4 years of mind blow. Anyway, come out the other end, graduate, get a job in the largest holistic health center in Virginia, where I went to Virginia to practice because my parents sort of retired there. And in that first year, the guy who owned that big clinic, this monster holistic health center, got involved in a bad investment scheme and ended up forced into bankruptcy. And me and the other greenhorner like me bought that clinic from the bankruptcy court for a song and a dance. And I ended up with the largest holistic health center in Virginia in my lap in my first year of practice. That's how the universe works. When it says yes to you, yeah, you made the right decision, do that, right? And I'm going, excuse me, I didn't make that decision. You made the decision before me. Because do you remember back before I went to chiropractic school, I was weighing, should I go to chiropractic school or should I fluff out this film production company I'm trying to form? And my circle of elders up there is going, I think he's trying to talk himself out of going to school. What are we going to do? So they burned my house down and burned down my cameras and all my films that I had made, and my musical instruments, and everything I owned was reduced to ash. And the insurance money was just enough to travel to Iowa with the money I needed for first and last month rent and school books, and I could travel light. So you see how it goes. It's like,
yeah. And some people are surprised when they hear. I know some people are surprised when they hear those type of stories, thinking, that surely it wouldn't be that traumatic. But sometimes we need drama to
I think my circle of elders up there look down upon me as I'm a little dense, so I need big messages.
Yes. I've seen that many times with people.
So then there came this point when I'm all of a sudden the owner of this monster clinic with a well-oiled staff, and I'm making money for the first time in my life. You can tell because the insurance companies want to be your friend. The credit card companies are knocking on your door. You're pre-approved.
For everything.
Pre-approved. So I thought, I could go down and get my first bank loan and outfit myself with a recording studio and cut an album as a composer and a musician, something I always wanted to do. So I can check that off. I did that. I produced an album, and even if I give them away for birthday presents for the rest of my life, that's at least I did that.
Yeah.
So I bought the equipment, all this latest top of the line stuff, stuck it in my spare room. And so now I've got this room as a recording studio all set up. And my wife at the time wants me to work on her back because I'm a chiropractor. So I pop up my portable table in the spare room like I always do and plop her on the table, and all of a sudden realize I've just been set up because I've got a patient and a treatment table in a recording studio. And my brain is going, I wonder if I could make a chiropractic adjustment with a sound wave. Each vertebra is a different shape, density, and mass, like a bunch of wine glasses. So I should be able to test out and find a frequency for the vertebra, and let's see if that works. So I did that procedure, found a frequency, put a speaker on her back, and 5 minutes later she gets up and she's out of pain, and all my tests are negative. And I just made the first chiropractic adjustment in history with a sound wave. Maybe Pythagoras or somebody did it, but that little moment changed my life, because the little thought of, I wonder if I could, turned into a doorway I walked through that changed everything. Because now I could bring it back to this clinic where I'm seeing 40 patients a day, and I can start to use these sound frequencies on hundreds of different patients. and do cranial work with sound waves and influence organ functions with sound waves. And at a certain point, I started thinking, actually, at a certain point, I had the big idea, the big holistic idea. The big idea is that there's an organic biological intelligence that knows how to grow my body out of 2 cells and differentiate the tissues and make them all function on automatic without me thinking about it up here. It's all happening under the hood. But that's me. It's part of my identity. It's my biological identity, aside of who I think I am. And it has inherent powers to balance and heal. The magic act, if I cut myself and somehow the blood stops by itself and the scab forms and then there's a scar, it all did it by itself, and I don't know what the heck just happened there, but a million levels of that are happening inside my body all the time. And when I have disease and something's going awry under the hood, it's not like that has landed on my body from Venus or something and is an invader that needs to be killed. It's a functional imbalance in my system that is giving rise to alarms going off, which are symptoms for me to do something about it. The underlying principle of that is that the symptoms and the disease is actually, why isn't the inherent healing properties of the body taking care of that like it always does? What's going on? So from that standpoint, the healing properties in the body are being blocked for some reason for doing its normal healing job that it normally does. And the internal physician program, so to speak, is in the center of your brain in a little zone called the hypothalamus. And inside of that are little organelles that are the origin of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Fight or flight is sympathetic, and relax and digest is parasympathetic. And when either one of those is on, it pulls the energy out of my body's reservoirs and uses it for that purpose. And then when it comes back to zero, the energy goes back to the reservoir, and the internal physician program starts working on its list that it had abandoned temporarily to do this other job. So this concept of balance in the autonomic nervous system, where sympathetic, parasympathetic, neither one is on using energy, that's called homeostasis. And homeostasis is a prerequisite for healing. Right? You can't be fighting for your life, and you can't be digesting your food because the energy is used. So it has to be zero, energy's back, and now I'm working on my list. So the big idea was, if I can affect organ function and vertebral function and meridian function with sound waves, maybe I could affect brain function. Because if I could affect brain function, what does it do as an organ? It tells all the other systems what to do. So if I could balance it in the brain, I could reawaken the internal physician program, put it back in place, and have it do all the work that I'm doing with a dozen different techniques, searching around through your body for imbalances here and there and using various techniques to rebalance them, where I'm playing doctor, when in reality the only doctor who does the healing is inside you. Right? So that means the rational thinking mind is the patient who doesn't have a clue what's going on. I'm the physician's assistant, and under the hood is the doctor.
Great analogy. Yeah.
Who is being blocked from doing the healing job. And my job as a physician's assistant is to consult that doctor under the hood and ask it, how can I help? How can I help to remove the blockages? And the answer is, well, just please get me out of this vicious cycle I'm stuck in over here with a fight or flight response. So, you know, at that moment when I was in this clinic, I've been there for 9 years, and I was teetering on the edge of after 9 years, I'm very successful. I'm straining because there's so many patients, so I need to open up a satellite clinic or something. And I can see the writing on the wall. I'll probably make a lot of money, but I won't be a doctor anymore. I'll be an administrator of clinics.
Yes.
Not a good formula for success.
No.
However, I thought, you know, what I really should be doing is this sound thing. If I can affect brain function with sound frequency and see it clear all these imbalances in the body with this one frequency, that's crazy stuff. I mean, nobody is doing that stuff. For some reason, I'm in the right place at the right time and it's being presented to me, and I should really be acting on that. And so I should be, here's my heart is saying, go and do this. And the other part is going, but you've just reached the pinnacle of success and about to explode. And then I'm saying, well, I couldn't do that because I couldn't afford to do that. And you can't do it in Virginia. It's too parochial there, too suppressive. And then I'm going, but wait a second, you could cash in your chips. You could sell that clinic. You could sell your house. You could go to some place where they don't lock people up for these kind of ideas, like California.
Yes. Well, actually, while we're on the subject of that, do you know Dr. Gladys Magani? She is 102 years old now. I recently interviewed her.
Wow. No, tell me about her. Sounds amazing.
Well, she and her husband were known as sort of the grandparents of holistic medicine, and I think her husband did a lot of work studying and writing about the work of Edgar Cayce and the work of Edgar Cayce and all of his many readings, and validating a lot of the prescriptions that he prescribed to clients.
Yep.
But she's still going strong. She's written 2 books about health, and she's 102, and she's doing interviews, and she's got a 10-year plan as well.
Good God. Oh, that's so I'll have to read those books. So
yeah,
just state the name again.
Dr. Gladys Magani.
Magani, okay.
Yeah, and I know her husband is passed on now, but they worked a lot with Edgar Cayce obviously he had passed on when they started, but they were studying, and I think a part of the Edgar Cayce Research Foundation, they had a lot to do. Yeah.
Yeah, when I lived in Virginia, I made the trip there. Is Virginia Beach. It's about 3 hours away from where I was living, but big old house and the library and the store.
Incredible.
It's mind-blowing. All the tapes and all the documents, and it's amazing.
Well, I love what you talk about with this inner physician or inner healing, and I always say this when I communicate to people, you know, and even you hear, if you look at the Bible and you hear about Jesus and healing and stuff, and I always say to people, if healers did the healing, then why do some people get it and some people don't? But I love your analogy is you're there as an assistant. You're there to help the inner physician, because it's the inner physician that actually does the healing.
Well, if you remember back to the incidences in the New Testament where Jesus does some miraculous healing on somebody, and afterwards they're falling down and praising him, and he's going, "It's not I who healed you. Your faith healed you."
Yes. Yeah.
Your faith that I had the power to heal you is what healed you. So it's essentially a placebo effect. It's like the spontaneous remission effect. The fact that if you believe in just the right way, you penetrate deep enough into the sort of the collective unconscious mind substrate, and make a different decision in the quantum field. You know, the many of the things that we see currently for me in my news feeds, I get all these different news feeds, quantum news feeds and health news feeds, and try to keep my pulse on what's happening. And I watch the parade of quantum physicists struggling to understand the nature of reality at the core of the quantum field, right? So my body is made of cells, made of compounds, made of atoms, made of quarks and charms and hadrons and leptons, and at some point you break the smallest particle open and there's nothing inside except energy pattern relationships in a state of vibration, forming standing waves that look solid but they're not. If you zoom in close, it's like the sand particles on the metal plate that are vibrating with sound, and they form patterns with different frequencies. Those lines that make the patterns look solid, but if you look up close, they're just dancing sand particles. Same thing in the quantum field. The closer you look, the more you see that nothing is solid at all. Everything is vibration, forming patterns based on frequencies. And when you start to zoom back, those patterns nest together and look like a quark and look like a charm and look like a proton and look like an atom and look like a person. It's this sort of hyperdimensional movie with pixel depth that's too small to ever measure or see. You can't see through the illusion, you know, that way anyway. But a hallmark of that is two basic principles that came out of quantum physics that's deeply associated with the concept of healing, with vibrational healing, and with higher states of consciousness and high states of meditation. All this stuff tends to meet at one place, where the two principles are Schrodinger's cat paradox and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says, I can't measure the location of an atom and its speed at the same time. If I measure its speed, it's impossible to tell where it is. If I measure where it is, it's impossible to tell how fast it's going. Schrodinger's cat paradox has got to do with this prize-winning physicist Schrodinger makes such an astounding discovery about the nature of reality at the quantum field that he wants to run out and tell everybody. But the only people he can tell are other mathematicians, because it's a formula on a blackboard.
Yes.
and so he's got to somehow translate that into a metaphorical story that could illustrate what the math is showing. And that's called a thought experiment. And the most famous thought experiment of all of them is Schrodinger's cat paradox, about the nature of reality. And so that story is, you've got a cat in a box, and the lid is on the box so you can't see the cat. The cat's in the box with a bottle of cyanide and a hammer suspended above it. And if a random act happens, either the hammer's going to drop or not. Let's say that the random act is, I'm going to give the box a shake, and either the hammer drops or it doesn't drop. And if it does drop, it breaks the bottle of cyanide, cat dies. If it doesn't drop, the cat's okay. But I can't tell which it is because the box is closed. So quantum physics is telling us that until you open the box and consciousness arrives on the scene to witness, the cat now exists in a twilight zone state of living cat, dead cat. It hasn't become one of those two yet. The missing ingredient for baking bread is consciousness. Right. So if you're missing ingredient, you don't get bread, right? So that means, let's say that I'm a scientist and I'm going to do this experiment. I got the cat in the box, I've got the cyanide, I got the hammer, put the lid on, give it a shake, note down the time, and write some little things. Then I come over and I lift up the lid and I take a look. It's a couple of minutes later. Take a look. There's a dead cat. And I'm going, oh, okay, so when I shook the box, the cat died. Nope. When you shook the box 2 minutes ago, the cat entered into the twilight zone state of neither alive nor dead. It wasn't until 2 minutes later that when you open the box and take a look that you just created the past event.
Yeah, wow.
So the deeper issue here is there's a scientist here in San Diego, Fred Alan Wolf, who wrote this book called Starwave. In that book, he takes on the Schrodinger cat paradox. He's going, cats, boxes, cyanide. How could I relate that to my regular life? I don't quite understand how that relates. And so let's take that on and reinvent it. The reinvention is the next moment from now is a closed box. And we're going to arrive there whether we want to or not. We're going to arrive in the next moment. The lid's going to fly off. We're going to look in the box. And what's in the box is not a cat. It's an infinite field stretching out to infinity of all possibilities that could be in that next moment. Which means that we could just as easily be jellyfish in another dimension as my next word. Question is, why is it always my next word? Why does this persist? Why is it me here talking to you there, me saying these words and you hearing them, and people out in the audience listening to what I'm saying? Why is it moment after moment after moment, word after word after word, body after body after body persisting? Why is that? Why is it always that choice? And the answer is in the sutras of Patanjali, 4,000-year-old text from India, and the Upanishads and the Maratpaha. It's this concept that when consciousness arrives on the scene of the next moment for now, with an infinite playing field of all possibilities, all with equal weight, I'm not coming with a clean slate. I'm coming with a belief system and an expectation. I'm expecting you to be there and me to be here and my next word to come out. Because we believe this is what reality looks like. It's populated with people and things. That there's a person here named Jeff who's 75 and you over there, and there's all these people, and I can prove it. I've got junk. Look at my stuff back here. I've got photographs. I can call somebody up and they can say, yeah, they knew me 20 years ago, and I have memories of my mother and father when I was a little kid. And from a standpoint of quantum physics, none of that has any reality. Its reality is being created right now to support me believing I'm this old and I have this stuff. Because I have memories of where all this stuff come from, but I just created all those memories right now to support this idea. And then the next moment from now, I do the same thing all over again. And over again and over again and over again, so fast that you can't see the flicker. So it's an illusion you can't penetrate. And it means that from a standpoint of healing, that, I mean, first of all, it's a heady concept, so catch your breath. Because the implications are, if I have a patient who comes into me who's convinced that all of her problems have spun from the moment when she was 6 years old and was molested by her father, and that's ruined her life. Excuse me, but you were never 6 years old and you never had a father, and you never got molested. You're creating that story right now, moment by moment by moment, persisting the story. And the question is, what's the perk for your consciousness to do that? Why? Why are you creating a story and living this drama? What's the purpose? The purpose is always for some lesson I have to learn.
I'm sure you're familiar with this quote, Wayne Dyer's quote, and I find it very profound. Change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. I mean, that has so many different levels to it, but it's exactly what you're saying.
I'll believe it when I see it, or I'll see it when I believe
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it. I'll see it when I believe it. Yeah,
See it when I believe it.
it sort of goes to the point of spontaneous remissions, where
Yes.
I get a cancer death sentence and I've got 6 months to live, and the impact of that emotionally is able to uh, take me into such a deep part of myself that I break through the barriers and arrive in the present moment, standing on the threshold of the box that the lid just flew off of the next moment from now. And I've got an infinite number of field there, and something in my spirit stands forth and says, I reject the idea of being a statistical person who dies of this cancer, and I'm just not going to go there. That's not me. I've got other work to do. And something powerful and strong from that deep region makes a new decision. And the universe is constantly looking for a path of least resistance to save energy. And I just supplied it. In other words, the infinite field out there, and I have an expectation that it's going to be me saying the next word. That one possibility out on that field becomes the path of least resistance the universe is looking for. I just made the decision of which one pops into existence. The universe isn't going to make that decision. It's looking for a path of least resistance, and there isn't one because everybody's a level playing field, unless I add special significance to one outcome that I believe should be happening. The question is, how do I get to that place of myself? How could I learn to get to that place of myself without having to get cancer and get the big shock, right? And we know that place, what that place looks like in deepest stages of meditation and transformation. And once we understand what an EEG pattern of a certain state looks like, we can use high-tech means of brainwave entrainment to entrain your brainwaves to that state or any other state we choose and exercise it like a gym. It's sort of solving the problem that people have always had with, how do I meditate? I want to devote my life to meditation. I'm going to join a monastery and sit on my butt for 30 years to learn how to do it. And all of my masters, there's no way to explain what you have to do. You can give all kinds of allegories about, but you can't quite explain it. You can't quite nail it down what you have to do. But if you use something like brainwave entrainment to a previous high meditator's brain pattern, you can viscerally put you right in the middle of that place, like training wheels. It's sort of like you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. But you can hold its nose and put some water in its mouth and stack the deck in your favor, so to speak, right?
Well, I wanted to ask you this question. I know you knew her when she was alive, Louise Hay, and I'm sure you're familiar with her first book, Heal the Body. She, I know, wasn't the first, but she put together a book of the metaphysical connection between illness in the body and underlining emotional patterns. It might be anger, resentment. What's your view on that type of thinking when it comes to us creating illness or dis-ease in the body?
That is absolutely true. I mean, I was in practice for 40 years. I saw it all the time. As somebody comes in and they got a mystery shoulder problem, they've been to the doctor, they've taken x-rays. I know that most likely there's some muscles that are weak that are not holding it, and I'll fix those and fix the meridians. But I know that for every physical problem, there's an emotional counterpart and a self-defeating belief system and a spiritual issue, because you can't separate those things. The only reason they're separated is semantics. People made up names to describe something and then believed that that something was now different, and it never was. From the standpoint of nature, there's no place where my physical body ends and my emotions begin. So that means that for every person who comes in with back pain, a physical back pain, you know they have an emotional back pain and a self-defeating belief system portion of that back pain and an issue. But you would see it all the time. When I was work on the shoulder would start to get better, I would always jokingly say, you know what Louise Hay has to say about that? It's like, you're shouldering too much responsibility. And after we have a good laugh, they sober up and go, holy moly, my shoulder started when my mother-in-law moved in the house. I mean, this happened so often over the decades that it just became, you absolutely knew that was true. Her favorite,
because it's true.
It's just absolutely true. You know, life itself is a metaphor. This whole business is a metaphor. Louise's favorite one, by the way, was chronic constipation, sitting on old shit that you're not willing to get rid of.
Love that. How many of us do that?
I've got it. Now you might enjoy this here.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, I'll put that up on the, what a lovely shot. So tell me about your connection with Louise. I know the audience will be very interested to hear how you, beautiful, came to know her, and you obviously worked with her in some capacity.
We were a couple. Yeah. So I met her when I first moved to California. So that whole tale of sort of building myself up to sell my practice and sell my house and cross that bridge and take a chance on this idea and drive to California where I didn't know anybody and set up a big center, devote myself full-time to the sound thing. I opened up a big center and a brain spa, like Disneyland for the mind, where you could come in and try all the devices that you'd been seeing in Time magazine and the light and sound machines and all the other kind of, there was dozens of those kind of things. And I bought them all and put them in this mind-boggling, beautiful place that I set up. And it attracted huge press, and I got really well known. It really kicked things off. And all these people started showing up. That's when I first met Tony Robbins. He walked in, biggest guy I'd ever seen at that point. But so I knew Tony Robbins from that point. And usually people would call up on the phone and make an appointment or ask some questions. Louise called up and said, I want to talk to Dr. Jeff Thompson.
Sounds like her.
Straight to the top, right? You know?
Yeah.
And I talked to her on the phone and I told her, you know, usually pretty busy here. There's always room for one more. And she said, well, I'll be coming down from Santa Monica. I said, yeah, a couple of hours, no problem. So a couple of hours later, she shows up. I still remember what she was wearing. She was wearing a multicolored, her hair was up with a multicolored scarf, and she's bubbly. And one thing about Louise is she excelled in not losing her little girl.
Yes.
And her sense of play and her sense of mischief. She loved to screw around with the rules where it wasn't socially acceptable to do that. And everybody's squirming, and she's having the time of her life watching people scramble to keep the social etiquette in place when it's bullshit. But as soon as we met each other, it was like this thing. We were like two little kids, and we played there for an hour or so. Now, here's the other weird thing is About 30 minutes before she showed up, my place started emptying out. And when she walked through the door, there wasn't a person in the place. I didn't think I'd ever seen it like that. This was always jammed. So she walks and the place is empty. So it's just her and me. And so I started showing her around. And the next thing I know, we're playing with stuff and going crazy and laughing and giggling. And then we went to lunch and we became really good friends and we hung out a lot. I got to know her and all of her circle of friends, and then that went on for a long time. Then somehow that drifted. She sold this house and moved there, and I moved this office and went there, and we lost each other for 10 years. Friend of mine, who's a mutual friend, who also knew her before she ever wrote her first book, came into town, was staying in my guest room, and he said, I'm going to go out to dinner with Louise. I'm going to ask her to go out to dinner. I said, oh, Louise, I haven't seen her for so long. See if I can come along. So we all had dinner together. And when Louise is eating at a table in a restaurant, when she finishes a portion of something like a salad, when she's done with it, she pushes the plate out of her space. But when she does that, she pushed it into my space. And so I pushed it back. And she got this shocked look on her face like nobody does anything with Louise Hay. Everybody just does this thing with Louise Hay. But so here's the thing, when we were going out to lunch after playing around and we're having this discussion, we're talking and stuff, all of a sudden she stops and she looks at me, she goes, you don't know who I am, do you? And I had to say, no, I'm sorry, are you famous or something? Because I just come from Virginia for 9 years in purgatory. I didn't know who Louise Hay was. I was like, stuck in the Civil War battleground there. So she just roared with laughter. She's just like, thought that was the greatest thing because she made a friend without an agenda. It's hard for wealthy, famous people to find a friend that's real. It doesn't have something that they want or something that they hope they're going to get out of it because you're famous and rich. Maybe you're going to give them some money, or the fame will rub off and other people notice you. So it's a dear thing to have friends who don't know who you are. So that was the core of it and why that friendship endured. And then here we are at dinner doing this thing, and all of a sudden the whole memory of who we were together previously came back, but better. It was like we started hanging out again and going to lunch together, and then she invited me to come to her place. Her place, by the way, was she had two places, but her main house was in San Diego, facing Balboa Park, which is this huge park in San Diego. And she invited me for dinner with her friends. So now I'm going to get to meet her circle of friends, the people that she has as her personal friends. And so I go to this really fancy building where you kind of go in and they buzz you in. There's a desk with some person there with a uniform on, and you know what I mean? And so I come up and I go, I'm here for a dinner party at Louise Hay. And they said, oh yes, looking on the list. Oh yes, and they get up and they guide me to the elevator and they do the fob on the elevator, unlock it and start to walk away. And I'm going, oh, which floor? And I said, the penthouse. Oh, of course, the penthouse. I mean, yeah, the penthouse. Yeah. So all the way up to the penthouse, and in the penthouse is this two-story penthouse with all these beautiful artifacts from India and Indonesia and big, beautiful grand piano with big windows looking out over San Diego, and nice big dining room table with all these friends. And I was being, unbeknownst to me, interviewed for friendship.
Unbeknownst, I love it.
As everybody's sitting there going, is this guy one of us or not? And it all has to do with your personality and how you mix and how you relate, and you know what that's like. And afterwards, I'm drawn to that piano because, you know, I've got 90 albums and sold all over the world, and I'm a composer, a musician, and so I'm going, can I see that piano? She said, oh yeah, yeah. We walk over to this beautiful grand piano, and the piano, I lift the lid from the keys, and the middle octave has got stickers on each key, C, C sharp, D. I'm going, it's a $30,000 piano, and she doesn't play piano. And going, Louise, you don't play piano? She said, oh no, dear, no. I tried, but I'm just, and I'm going, but Louise, you've got a $30,000 piano. What are you doing with the piano if you don't play? She's going, well, you have to have a piano, right? You have to have a grand piano. You got a place like this, you have to have a piano. And I'm going, yeah, I guess so. And she said, do you play? And I'm going, do I play? Yeah, I play. Yeah, I play. She said, well, play something for me. So I sat down, and I allow my fingers to just do this thing. I mean, it's how I relax. It's just let my fingers, and something comes out. And if I'm lucky, I've got a recorder going because I put it in a musical scrapbook and pull it up later and make a song out of it. So I'm playing this stuff and playing this stuff, and she starts crying. And that became a hallmark of our relationship after we became a couple. Was we'd go to the kitchen, but she would divert me to the piano, and I'd pull a chair for her, and I'd sit at the piano, and I'd start playing, and she'd start crying, and then we'd go have dinner. After she died, she bequeathed me the piano, and that's the piano back there.
Oh wow, beautiful.
Louise Hay's piano.
Wow. That was, what was that like when she passed on? I mean, obviously, I think it was, how many years ago is it now? It's quite a few years ago.
6 years, maybe 7, somewhere around like that. She she had had a stroke. I found her. I was supposed to be teaching she had a second house in Carlsbad. So I live in Carlsbad. And then I find out she's got a house in Carlsbad too. I'm going, what? And then my office is in a place called Faraday Avenue, and Hay House is on Faraday Avenue. And it's like, oh. At lunch, that one of those times, at the moment when our relationship shifted from good friends to something else, was in a restaurant in Carlsbad. We're sitting across the table, and I ask her if she knows anything about astrology. Now, there's a monumentally stupid question.
Yes.
I mean, Louise knows everything about astrology, and she's got astrology friends who keep her updated every week about, you know, and she just kind of chuckles and says, yes, I know a few things. And I'm saying, well, I mean, what I mean is, do you know enough about astrology to know your sun sign and moon sign and rising sign and stuff like that? And she says, yeah. I said, well, what is it? Fess up. She goes, I'm a, you know, Libra sun and Scorpio moon and Leo rising. And I'm going, what? I'm I'm a Scorpio moon and Leo rising. We both got the same moon and rising sign.
Oh, wow. And what are you
And
so
then
playful together?
and then both of us said, "Oh wow," at the same time because the "oh wow" meant, "Oh shit."
I met my match.
Oh, oh dear. A lot is just now getting explained. And we both knew at that moment that this was like different. And also I was, I was what she was 88 and I was
Yeah,
68.
yeah, it's big.
And I'm now having these feelings for her when it's all mashed up because I knew her as a playful friend and then I knew her as a famous person. And I could always edge that part out of my consciousness because I had this part first. But I could always feel that part creeping into my consciousness. You're friends with the famous Louise Hay. And I always beat that down. But now it's like you're falling in love with Louise Hay. And now that's really working with the famous Louise Hay. And I'm pushing that away and going, and then it's coming back and saying, well, you're falling in love with a woman who's 20 years older than you. And I'm going, yeah, okay, now we're getting down to where this is really at. And then the voice comes in and goes, excuse me, but weren't you the one that was asking me just a month ago to look for a lady 20 years younger than you? And it was like, okay. It's like, yeah. And I have to say that love transcends all of that bullshit. It transcends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we had the time of our lives. I mean, I couldn't live there. I was still had a practice in businesses and so would come back and forth and come back and forth. But when I'd show up, she'd be really happy and we'd have all kinds of fun. And we'd just find ourselves in this laughing jag. And we didn't know why. I mean, I'd make some dinner and put it on some plates and we'd start laughing at the food. There's nothing funny about the food. I don't know what was going on. She would laugh. I would start laughing. Pretty soon we're laughing, and then we start laughing because we can't remember why we're laughing. We can't figure out what this is all about. But so she was at the Carlsbad house, and I was starting a 5-day intensive workshop series, and had a whole bunch of people who had flown in and had hotels and started on a Friday. I told her I'll be back at the end of that workshop today. I'll probably be home about 5:30. She said I'll have dinner. And when I got back and came in the house, this is the house in Carlsbad. I came around the corner and she wasn't there. I went to the bedroom, she wasn't there. I started, Louise, are you here? Louise, I can see food is over here cooking. I come in and there she is on the floor, propped up against the cabinet. And I think she might have fallen or hit her head. I don't know what was going on. Going, Louise, what's happened? Are you okay? What's going on? She's going, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I had to carry her to the bed. And I went to the hospital, and I slept in the hospital for a week. And then she came out of it, but she had aphasia.
Okay.
She couldn't talk, couldn't make herself understood. And we had a troop of people come through. I did my stuff with her. It slowly started to come back, but it was a tough period. And I remember having a conversation with her. I said, "Excuse me, Louise, you are, I mean, you're the author of 40 books. You're one of the most sought after speakers that there are, right? And here you are. You can't write and you can't speak. What does this mean?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
What's going on? And the answer was, I'm retired from that. She retired, changed her name from Louise Hay to Lulu Play. So all had to call her Lulu. Couldn't call her Louise. Couldn't call her Lulu Play. She was done with it. Those days were over, and all she needed now was love. And love doesn't speaking like that. It was interesting. And she died in the night, discovered by her personal holistic doctor.
Yeah.
The next morning. And she had died in her sleep with her hands folded on her chest. And I'm going, that's the way I want to go. Louise, again, trailblazing the way for the rest of us. Is like, that's how I want to go, in my sleep with my hands folded on my chest. Thank you very much.
Me too. I've been saying that for a long time. Old in my sleep, in bed, just drift off. Sounds the best way to go to me.
Step through the door.
What a remarkable story and legacy that she's left behind. I remember someone told me recently is that, when masters die or when people die, their work goes on and even they help from the other side. What's your thoughts on that when someone leaves the physical body? Do you think they're still invested somewhat in what their life represented?
Well, I think it's your choice whether you want to focus on a manifested reality that you used to populate with people that you used to know. You can make a decision to visit that and push that and help that. Some people are trapped in that through revenge or trying to trace down the person who did them in, or you know what I mean, the tragic being stuck. But from a conscious standpoint, if you had work to do that you felt wasn't complete and it needed a little bit of extra help, then you might choose to come back and push that. From what I knew from Louise, she had released that completely. She had built the third largest publishing company in the world that was specialized in self-help and had a niche, and she had the most remarkable people. It was, when she was in the hospital after a stroke, it was the most mind-blowing group of people who came by to spend time with her. But I remember, we would go to Hay House. I would do some of the Hay House radio shows, interviews, and she would show up and everybody there would be, oh, Louise is here, and she'd sit in there and just have a great time laughing and joking and stuff. But afterwards I asked her, are you planning on any other books, or what does it feel like to go back to Hay House and see this thing that you've got and all these people and this thing happening? And she said, oh, I'm finished with that, dear. I'm finished. It's like, I cut that off. I gave Hay House to Hay House. It's not mine anymore. I have no financial interests. I gave all of it to them. What they gave to me is whatever I want to do, I have a blank check. Whatever I want to buy, wherever I want to go. There's so much money that I couldn't spend it all. So anything I want, I get. And after I die, everything goes to Hay House, to the Hay House Foundation for helping people. And so, she was truly passed that on and sewed it up. So I don't have any personally, I don't feel that she had any reason to feel like she would have to come back as spirit to help something there. She really had the ability to do that. When it's done, it's done. It's over, it's over. I release that. And she had a ceremony for that. I release you. I bless you.
Yeah.
You know, and I have the big scissors and cut the cord, and now I'm moving on to whatever this next phase is going to be, and you never look back. She had many beautiful friends there. She would visit every once in a while, but it was never. She would do something to help it in some ways. Like she would go to the big conference things and make a showing on the stage, and everybody would applaud, and then she'd go home. This is interesting.
Yeah, I actually saw her on her last trip to Australia. I think it was a number of years before she died, but she spoke, and I got a photo of her, which was really nice. And but I think it was one of the last international things that she did. She came to Australia and did a big conference.
Yeah, it was a life-changing experience. It's always that way with someone who is, I would have discussion with her about how I felt that my life has been guided, that when I was struggling with whether I should go to chiropractic school or do the film production company, and my house burned down and made the decision for me because I was too stupid to do the right thing myself, or I go to Virginia and I get a job in this big clinic, and the next thing you know, the guy who owns the place goes bankrupt, and I get the clinic. My first year of practice got the biggest. Those kind of things are, you're being drafted for this job. It's not that you banged on doors and forced it to happen. It was like something bigger than you. And so when I get letters in the mail from people who go, "Thank you for saving my life. I've been this lifelong sleep problem. I've been to all kinds of experts and all kinds of doctors and this and that, and nobody can solve my problem. I bought this CD of yours, a sleep CD, and it's changed my life, and my thing is cured." And I'm going, wow. I mean, I don't know how am I supposed to take that in? Somebody I don't even know bought one of my CDs and it changed their life, and they're thanking me for changing their life, and it's like, wow. Or patients that I've seen who have incurable diseases that get cured, and their whole life is now saved, and thank God they came to see me, but I can't take responsibility for what happened. I'm just doing my thing that I was drafted for.
And don't you think that is exactly how it is from every perceived healer, from Jesus down to every sage and teacher and facilitator like you? We just facilitate or help people. This is the way I say it is we help people make the connection for themselves. We guide them to that place for them to connect to their own inner healing, or this aspect of themselves, that innate part.
There's from the esoteric traditions of the East, there's two types of pride. There's false pride, where I try to puff myself up and lie about who I am and what I've accomplished in order to impress people, perhaps to sell you something and make a buck or whatever. And real pride, which is organic pride. I have the right to be proud of the real decisions I've made in my life that have kept me on the path of spirit, which is the exploration of the great heroic journey about why am I here and what am I supposed to do. The decisions that come, that I choose the right fork instead of the left fork and the right fork is my heart drawing me. And every time I make that decision, the universe steps in and opens the doors and makes things happen. And when I choose the other way, I'm in pain and suffering, and I'm the one who has to make it work. And so I have a right to be proud of those moments when I really made a decision that was a good one. And whether it was, real courage or foolhardiness, I made it anyway, and I did do that. So those I can be happy about. And I could see that it was the same thing with her. She's a very super famous and super wealthy person, and it's just Louise doing her thing, writing some stupid little book, and had some friends come over to help her staple it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she sold 25 of them, and the next week it was 2,500. The next week is 250,000. Next thing you know, she's searching for people to help her. And it's just all of a sudden you just stepped into something that was so much bigger than you, that all you could do was dress nicely as the tide carries you beyond your control, And then your task is to remain being yourself and not believe in the myth that's arising around you. As soon as you believe in the myth that people are painting you to be, then you're lost. As long as you understand that if it helps for me to put on a white lab coat and be the great Dr. Thompson for people, and if that's going to help people get well, to get the CDs so they can be helped and I can make a living, then fine. But if I start to believe that I'm the great Dr. Thompson with the white lab coat, then I become an asshole.
And I've seen that a lot. I don't know about you. I've seen it a lot in the spiritual community, what we call the spiritual community. And it can be so
terrible thing.
It can be so varied. And the amount of narcissistic people that get pushed up into something. And I've had some dealings with people in my work, and I just think these aren't nice people anymore.
Never underestimate humanity's ability to turn anything into flim-flam.
That's good.
It's just that the sort of the new age holistic consciousness community, it tends to be even more gullible than average people.
I think that's a very true statement. Yeah.
And that becomes rife for con artists to put on a white robe and some beads and hawk whatever they want and get all kinds of followers to follow them around and do all kinds of weird things for them. And it's disturbing and troubling.
And it's also disappointing, I think, for people like yourself that have worked so hard and are so smart and intelligent and creative at what they do, and then you get these people that sort of come in and try and take advantage of the, as you said, people's gullibility, emotion, their vulnerabilities. I'm very careful about who I interview, and I really make sure someone resonates with me, and I look into their work before I would even consider promoting somebody.
There's something about spiritual maturity. Spiritual maturity maintains a rational, critical function of the mind. In other words, so I've sort of got this hard-nosed, skeptical scientist on my left shoulder, this bald-headed businessman with a cigar he puffs, and over here is the raging mystic with the robe and the pointy hat.
What a good balance, isn't it? Though you need.
And this guy over here, was a child of the 60s and grew up in that whole movement of the 60s and went to art school in the 60s and dropped acid and saw God and knows all of it and knows all the answers and understands all that stuff. And this guy over here starts puffing So when somebody comes along and says, oh, I went to this incredible practitioner who hooked me up to a computer and it showed me all my chakras and all my misalignments and all my organ functions and all I had to do was put my hand on this plate. And I'm going, well, and what do you think of that? I'm going, puff, puff. I'm going, well, I mean, how, and it scans me for 100,000 frequencies and it delivers 50,000 frequencies to heal me. And I'm going, that would be a gloriously, unimaginably wonderful thing if it was true. Please prove to me that it's true. Please show me the research by the 50, 60, 70 people that had to work full-time 7 days a week to research these effects out and find the 50,000 frequencies and catalog them and catalog their function on your body and prove that it worked in your body. And please show me that that was what it was and it wasn't a pendulum. Whereas this part says, hey, excuse me, there's nothing wrong with pendulums. Pendulums are good. I mean, pendulums work. And puff, puff, excuse me, but it only works for the real people surrounded by, you know, there's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people on the bell curve are flim-flam, jumping on a bandwagon to make a buck. 20% are the real people coming up with something real.
I really agree with that.
Yeah, 2% of the people are inspired with absolutely new original ideas, the kind of idea that could be patented, right? You see the same thing in all of nature. My body is 80% supporting tissue, blood and bone and sinew, and 20% is governing tissue, brain, nervous system. 2% is the doorway to consciousness. Somebody's driving this cart. Somebody has written the blueprint. In here, there's somebody who reads the blueprint, differentiates my tissues and makes it all run on automatic. But somebody designed the blueprint in the first place. And it's the same thing with Earth. I hate to say it, but 80% of the people on Earth are supporting tissue. They get born, they take the left fork and get a job, they work their whole lives in a 9-to-5 job and have babies, and their babies do the same thing they did until they die. And 20% are governing tissue, which might be the governments and multinational corporations and Illuminati and whatever else is on that list, you know.
And all of that is the industrialists that know that very phenomenon, that there is a certain percentage of people that will be in their monkey mind, be manipulated and controlled in this
easily
state.
Manipulated.
And
the perfect mark for flim-flam. It's easy. If you know anything about neuroscience, anything about NLP, anything about hypnosis, anything about subliminal programming, it's easy. It's easy to control people and sell them a bill of goods that they'll fall all over themselves to praise you for. And when you have reached a certain level of spiritual maturity, and you realize the law of karma, and you understand just why you don't do that when you have all the tools. Like what I know, I could easily become a billionaire and screw people all over the place and control people's minds at a distance and do kinds of stuff that frightens me.
I agree. I agree.
And I won't do that because I understand what that means. I understand why I'm here and what it's all about, that you don't do that. You're breaking laws when you do that, universal laws when you do that. And humanity as itself is breaking laws of nature. In other words, we have lost our indigenous self. We've lost our connection to our brother and sister living beings in different forms all over the earth. And the earth itself is a living being. We've lost our connection with that. Before what we have now, before the whole Western civilization world, 20, 30,000 years ago, when we were tribes, close to the earth. We understand at a deep level that we are children of earth, that we grow out of earth, that we belong here like a blade of grass, like a cloud in the sky, that all the other creatures that are around us are tribes themselves, like we are. We are the people tribe, the naming people. And there's the fox tribe and the monkey tribe and the bird tribe and the tree tribe and the lichen tribe and the mushroom tribe, and they all have a right to exist, and we all exist together as a symbiotic whole. We hold our boundaries based on our hunting grounds for our tribe, and we don't allow our tribe to grow beyond our hunting grounds. We maintain a status quo, homeostasis in our tribe space. Human beings have broken that. We decided, screw that. Why should I have a boundary? It's like what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. It's infantile. I start breaking the rules all over the place, and the brothers and sisters are like in shock, going, what's going on? They're taking my hunting grounds, they're killing my people, and they're not even killing me for food anymore. It's like, and now we take the whole planet over, and the planet somehow we now believe it belongs to us to do with as we will. And once you march down that road where you break such fundamental sacred laws of nature, you don't do that with impunity. You break the laws of nature at your expense. The penalty is death.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. The earth is heading towards the abyss. And our response? Flippant denial. And gaslighting and lying and cover up. And that's how we're going to go down? Is that how we're going to go down? That's sad and disgusting, particularly when you look at the quantum field and you realize when we arrive at a collective unconscious, all of us collectively under the hood, deep under the hood, are arriving at the next moment, and the lid flies off, and all of us as a collective make a collective decision of what the next moment is going to be. And is this the best we can do? We could have, this world could be anything that you could imagine, and this is the one we choose. And the reason is because when you don't choose, when you're not consciously engaged in that process, then you are a cork floating in the ocean, and the universe makes decisions for you by flipping a coin. It becomes a random process, a flipping a coin process, and you buff it around, and your whole life is reacting to things that happen to you that has no higher meaning. But when you get a good, clear idea about why you're alive, the purpose of me being alive is to find out why I'm here and what I'm here to do. How do I fit into the, multi-dimensional jigsaw puzzle that my piece is designed specifically to fit into this puzzle and hold the puzzle together? Energy can't be created nor destroyed. That means what is, right?
Just changes form,
concept,
exactly.